Assalamu alaikum, peace be with you. Today I wanted to share some tips and advice for myself and for others about how we can try to be spiritual without being stupid. And part of that will be a discussion of what I think is a useful definition for spirituality. So some ways that we kind of use it vaguely often are when we're sort of maybe we legitimately sense there's some sort of incompleteness to an explanation, or um, we want to argue for something. We want to argue like why we should pray or something, and we don't really know why, and so we sort of just wait. Oh, it's spiritual, It's um, and it acts as this kind of like excuse to not really make make a compelling argument, or really consider what we're doing fully. And then I guess the more insidious version of this is when people, and what comes to mind are people like Jordan Peterson, for instance, who will perhaps legitimately critique or bring up questions about predominant liberal ideas or what have you. But then once he'll kind of be like, well, now that we can use logic to break down these things that you've been assuming and you've been operating on, or we can break them down and show how ultimately all these concepts are relative, et cetera, et cetera. And then once you're in a state of sort of uncertainty and bringing things down to the abyss or the one, you could say, in a kind of a transcendent way of thinking, then all of a sudden he's going to pop back in and say something that's not really connected or logically connected to what he was arguing before, but just sort of say it really confidently and kind of say like, well, I put you in this state of doubt and questioning, and you've realized how little you know about the cosmos, and so how dare you think you can figure something out? Why don't you just go with the Bible? Because everyone's been using that for centuries, and it worked great, I guess. I don't know. And of course, that's not to say anything bad. Say that the Bible doesn't have a lot of spiritual value or what have you. But it's just this sort of bait and switch tactic that is used by a lot of. Yeah, I've seen it used many times, um, and when it's just, yeah, it's an excuse to make a logical jump, I suppose. And often these arguments come across as quite intriguing and even compelling in a sense, especially if no one else is sort of addressing the issues being brought up. Jordan Peterson in particular, I think was impactful because he was sort of bringing up questions that the predominant liberal establishment or what have you didn't feel comfortable addressing, and didn't. I think they also have an incomplete. They were lacking certain spiritual aspects to it. But then again, he's coming in and he's taking advantage of that. He and other people are taking advantage of that confusion, but without actually offering a solution, just sort of using the confusion to make a logical jump and sort of impress people and dazzle people and kind of intimidate them in a way. A little bit of that aggression and a little bit of that, how dare you think you can come up with an idea or challenge the system or what have you, to kind of, yeah. So to cow people into accepting the myth of meritocracy or what have you. Anyway, so that's kind of the insidious misuse of spirituality. And now I guess I want to offer maybe a clearer understanding, perhaps. So I guess I think of spirituality as, perhaps we could think of it very broadly. We might think of it as, well, as conscious beings, we one of our most base drives is to sort of like expand our consciousness. And I know that sounds kind of galaxy brained weirdo, whatever, but I just mean sort of like learning, essentially. And learning but learning in a very broad sense. So, not just learning information, but also learning ways of orienting oneself, ways of being conscious of our emotions, ways of integrating different spheres of life, ways of learning skills, learning what it's like to, or empathizing what it's like to be other people, or come to certain conclusions, or feel a certain way, or what have you. So basically, yeah, by expanding the consciousness, I mean, yeah, just sort of like learning in a very holistic way, expanding your ways of thinking and being, and orienting oneself in a way that allows you to sort of solve new problems, or weather new challenges, or what have you. And when we do this, I think that tends to it tends to include things that are away from the mundane, because naturally, by definition, the mundane ways of thinking are sort of our everyday stuff that we do, that we're sort of used to. We're used to thinking in certain mundane ways, everyday ways, etc. So often, by expanding our consciousness or learning in new ways, we are sort of pushing the limits of our logic and our ways of imagining things, and our ways of understanding metaphors, etc., our understanding of words. And so naturally, when we think of spirituality, perhaps some of the most prominent examples of spirituality are the ones that are pushing, that are us growing outside of, and getting outside of our mundane bubbles and our sort of ossified, our stiffened neural pathways that we're kind of always inhabiting. And so so I think of spirituality as kind of seeking truth and beauty in the most holistic way possible, trying to expand the consciousness, learn in new ways, etc. Integrating everything from the mundane details all the way to the cosmic realities, transcendent abstract patterns, etc. And so if we just think of spirituality as being, taking into account the biology, the physics, the psychology, the culture, the history, the symbolic meanings, the existential questions. That's a very common, very often the things that are lacking, that we need to address in our spirituality, are sort of existential questions, meaning things like, why, the problem of evil, or problem of suffering. What am I? Why am I here? etc. How do I know how to live a life that is worthwhile? That's perhaps the ultimate, that is like kind of the question of, or that is meaning in life. Things like this. So that's the kind of stuff. And I guess I should just emphasize here that while realizing the limits of logic, we should never let that make us just dispense with it, or misuse it, or claim things contrary to reality, and contrary to logic. We can't use that as an excuse to sort of jump over things. It's just more, I guess I see this as just sort of, realizing the ends of logic sort of helps us get out of our, kind of the idols of our logic, in a sense. It helps us expand our thinking, expand our consciousness. But when we come back to solve a real world problem, we cannot use transcendence as an excuse to defy ethics or reality.